FM News Talk 97.1. On-demand audio.
Ladies and gentlemen, speaking of political issues, really pleased, honored to have Senator Rand Paul on with us, who's a rock star when it comes to, in my opinion, common sense conservatism up there. He and Paul Ryan and the rest of those guys trying to keep people honest. And Senator Paul, welcome to the show.
Good morning. Glad to be with you.
I'm a big fan of your dad's, buddy. And we had some situations down here with caucuses, and we're redoing the caucuses after some terrible things that happened as it relates to liberty and the right to caucus. And so we're redoing them here. And I think Ron Paul's going to do pretty well in St. Charles County.
Yeah, that's what I've been reading also. And still some amazing things happening on the campaign trail. They had over 6,000, some estimate 7,000 people show up in California to hear him. These crowds are bigger than any other candidate, probably than the president. Unfortunately, they just haven't translated into delegates necessarily.
Yeah, and he doesn't even have a band, showing up for him, does he? I mean, that's the thing. And again, I've talked about this with people before because I'm sensing that, so Ron Paul doesn't have the delegates at this point, but there's also this kind of there's this attitude, this snooty attitude among some Republicans that somehow they're too good for the Ron Paul supporters. And I'm trying to tell conservatives and Republicans, I'm telling you, to dismiss and to act like Ron Paul supporters are some kind of interlopers in the GOP. You're doing so at your peril. I mean, to waste this kind of passion and the young voters out there is a huge mistake.
Well, traditionally, people have said you win elections by attracting independents, winning the independent vote, and also getting the energy of the youth. And that's one thing that Ron Paul has done better than any other candidate is bring people into the party who have been disgruntled and have either left the party or were never part of the party and distrust both parties to a certain extent. He's brought those people into the Republican primary process, and the Republican Party, frankly, ought to be trying to take a page out of his playbook.
Yeah, I try to tell people, it's like, keep in mind, these are people who have bothered to give their attention to the GOP when really they had the choice. It wasn't just the Democrats, what I'm saying is they had the choice. They could be focusing on independent votes or an independent party, a third party, what have you. And so to me, these are people who are honoring the GOP with their time. And so it's like, it's just a mistake to dismiss him. And I'm glad that it doesn't appear that Romney is in that category so far. And I would encourage him if he's heading towards a nomination to make sure that these individuals and Ron Paul and his people are included.
Well, my understanding is in Missouri, actually, the Romney and the Paul people have been very conciliatory towards each other and worked together to try to get delegates. And that's part of the process also. And it's actually, I think they've been very effective. In Missouri, I think my dad could actually end up with the most delegates.
Yeah, I think so too. And it's all because of the ability to have passionate people come out and to actually encourage passion. I think really it's not just that people are flocking to him for his uniquity or anything like that. They're flocking to him because they're listening to what he's saying. I have a son who, and a good example of that is I have a son who served and is currently serving in the Army Reserves and is in college now, served a tour in Iraq for a year. And he and his peers, although he was very proud of his service in Iraq and would go to Afghanistan in a second, but there is a vibe there among young people like my son and others who are very careful when it comes to foreign intervention because they're all on the hook for it.
Well, and that's the thing that I think a lot of Republicans don't quite understand is that the Constitution separated that power. The legislature is supposed to decide when we go to war and not the president unilaterally. And then when we do go to war, we really have always gone to war reluctantly to defend our country, but we go through a constitutional process. The people who have fought, we have tons of soldiers in Kentucky. We have 2 big bases. When I talk to the soldiers one-on-one, that's what they say to me. They're willing to go. They've volunteered. They've done this. But they're also a little bit annoyed at this point that the Afghan soldiers are walking behind them, smoking cigarettes. If they get shot, they steal their stuff and run. Karzai, has absolutely contempt for the United States, saying he would side with Pakistan if we were at war with Pakistan. Things like that are starting to drag our soldiers down a bit, and our soldiers are starting to say, you know what, I think it is time to come home from Afghanistan.
Senator Rand Paul with us this morning, and I want to ask you, although I think this whole collusion thing is whiny on the part of the other candidates, but some have, though, mentioned your name because they say, well, there's a chance that all this could be because there's a possibility Rand Paul could be a vice presidential pick for Mitt Romney. I don't believe it has anything to do with any discussions between about votes and delegates between Mitt Romney and Ron Paul, but to the question of whether or not Rand Paul would consider a spot on a Romney ticket, I'd ask you, would you?
Well, the interesting thing is people say some kind of secret deal's been made, and I say, well, if it's a secret deal, it's still secret to me. Nobody's letting me in on it. So, no, I've never had any discussions with Governor Romney or with my father, and my father says that he's never had any discussions, and so has Romney. So all parts of the party have all said they haven't had any discussion. That being aside, I'm still, working hard for my father, trying to help him gain delegates. Whatever comes of it, if someone says, oh, you're being considered, I think to be considered is an honor. I mean, to, a year and a half ago have been a doctor in a small town, now to be in the U.S. Senate and to have someone say, oh, you would be considered as a vice presidential nominee, I think obviously is an honor, but not something I'm really considering or have had anybody talk to me about.
Well, we'll keep us posted on that, and we'll be obviously paying attention to it. I think it would be an interesting choice, and I think you're among that class of individuals, the Marco Rubios of the world, and on the House side, the Paul Ryans of the world, who represent a new and young invigoration of the conservative cause. I just think it's fantastic. So I'd congratulate you if you actually were chosen, but even to be considered, as you point out, is an honor. I guess very briefly, what's going on with the budget now? I know there have been a lot of talks about it. And, earlier, President Obama was in his speech attacking those who supported the Ryan plan and even invoked Gingrich's claim that it's somehow right-wing social engineering. But what's your take on the Ryan budget and how realistic it is that this could actually be something we could install in our government?
Well, first off, I think Harry Reid and every Democrat member of the Senate Budget Committee ought to give their salary back. I mean, they haven't given us a budget in 3 years if they're not willing to work and do what the law actually requires. The law actually requires that they present a budget. Now, last year we forced them to vote on the president's budget. You know how many votes he got? 0. Mm-hmm. Not one vote for the president's budget. So, our office has been working on having a conservative alternative. We have a budget that we've produced that balances in 5 years. We've been working with the Republican Study Committee, which is a conservative group in the House, and they now have a budget that balances in 5 years. I like the fact that Paul Ryan has brought up entitlement reform, but unfortunately his budget doesn't balance for 28 years. So meanwhile, President Obama says that's too extreme, and then many of us say it's just not enough because you really need to balance in someone's lifetime or in someone's term of office to make it realistic.
Yeah, I've heard Ron Paul recently say that it's like, we appreciate the effort, but 28 years, that's too long to wait.
It's hard to believe any kind of budgetary predictions for more than a year. Even predicting next year, they're not very good at. So when you talk about all these 10-year windows and they're going to, spend the money now and pay for it over 10 years, you just can't believe it because, one, they're not very honest people, a lot of them, but two, they may not even be in office during the 10 years to enforce the promise they've made. So we're already talking about going back on the sequestering of money that we just passed 4 months ago, and they don't obey their own rules. We have rules that say they're supposed to pass a budget, and all the appropriations bills, the spending bills, should agree with the budget, and they don't do that. They don't even adhere to the rules that are in existence now.
Senator Rand Paul, it's been a pleasure having you on the air. I have to admit, we made fun of some of your people there in Kentucky for rioting after they won the game, but congratulations on winning the NCAA championship.
Well, I have to admit, we burned a couch in our neighborhood too. So.
You did? Who's we?
Well, some neighbors.
Oh, okay.
But and some of the teenage kids, they wanted to see a couch burn. There's something about burning a couch. So we took a dilapidated old couch out to the bonfire and burned it, and the kids ran around the fire and said, "Go Big Blue."
Well, at least it was your couch. It wasn't somebody else's couch, and you turned it over and burned it. So good for you guys. All right, Senator Rand Paul, congrats. Appreciate you being on with us as long as you were, and please give our regards to your dad.
Will do. Thanks.
All right, Senator Rand Paul in Kentucky, everybody.
You're listening to Allman in the Morning. Common Sense Radio.
At least he was honest. He's like, yeah,
Burning
well,
couches.
we burned a couch, so that's funny.